April 14th, 1945. Friedrichroda, Thuringia, Germany. The hangar smelled wrong. That's what Captain Harold Watson noticed first when his boot hit the concrete floor of the abandoned Gothaer Wagenfabrik facility. Not the usual stench of spent fuel and burnt rubber that clung to every Luftwaffe airfield they'd liberated. This was different. Charcoal dust, resin, something chemical and synthetic that made his eyes water in the dim light filtering through the broken roof panels. His team had been racing the Soviets across collapsing Germany for 3 weeks now, part of Operation Lusty, the Allied mission to seize Nazi aviation technology before Stalin's forces could claim it. They'd already cataloged dozens of Messerschmitt Me-262 jets, their Jumo 004B turbojets, still warm from their final flights. They'd found prototype rocket fighters and experimental engines that shouldn't exist yet. But Watson had learned to expect the impossible in these final days. The Third Reich was dying, and in its death throes, it had birthed nightmares. The thing in the hangar made him forget how to breathe. It sat in shadows at the far end, covered partially by camouflage netting, but even shrouded, its shape was all wrong. No fuselage, no tail. Just a swept wing that seemed to grow out of darkness itself, smooth and predatory, like something that had evolved rather than been built. Watson's hand found his flashlight without thinking, and when the beam hit the aircraft's skin, he understood why his chest had tightened. The surface absorbed light, matte black mixed with some kind of charcoal-based coating that seemed to drink the flashlight beam rather than reflect it. He moved closer, his engineer's mind trying to process what he was seeing. The wing measured maybe 60 feet across, but it looked bigger, heavier with possibility. 2 jet engine nacelles protruded from the trailing edge, housing what his briefing notes later confirmed were Jumo 004C turbojets, an improved variant they'd only heard whispers about. Lieutenant Frank Cairns appeared at Watson's elbow, notebook already open, pencil scratching. "Jesus Christ, sir. Is that what I think it is?" Watson couldn't answer. He was staring at the cockpit, a bubble of glass emerging from the wing's center, like an eye opening. Everything about this machine violated the rules. No vertical stabilizer, no horizontal tail, just that pure, unbroken wing sweep, aerodynamically clean in ways that made conventional aircraft look like they'd been assembled by children. The intelligence reports had mentioned the Horten brothers, Reimar and Walter, twin geniuses obsessed with flying wings since childhood. Glider pilots turned aircraft designers who'd somehow convinced Hermann Goering himself to fund their fever dream. The HO-229 was supposed to be theory, wind tunnel models, maybe a glider prototype at most. It wasn't supposed to be real. It definitely wasn't supposed to be sitting here, looking like it had flown. Watson's flashlight found the cockpit interior through the dusty glass. Instruments labeled in German, a control stick that looked too delicate for a jet fighter. And there, on the canopy frame, scratched into the metal with something sharp, a date. March 18th, 1945, less than a month ago. Someone had flown this thing. His hand trembled as he pulled out his camera, the Leica F, that had documented every captured aircraft from Normandy to here. The shutter clicked 3 times before he noticed what was hanging from the control stick. Dog tags. American dog tags. The chain looped around the grip like a prayer offering or a warning. Cairns saw them too. His pencil stopped moving. "That's not possible, sir." Watson reached through the partially open canopy, his fingers closing around the cold metal. He lifted them into the light, and his stomach dropped through the hangar floor. The name stamped into the steel was one he knew. Lieutenant Robert Mitchell, 357th Fighter Group, 8th Air Force, missing in action over Bavaria, February 1945. 2 months before this aircraft supposedly made its first flight test. The hangar suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Watson's pulse hammered in his ears as he stared at those dog tags, then back at the scratched date on the canopy, and then at the aircraft itself. This impossible machine that shouldn't exist, that had somehow been flown by a man who disappeared 2 months before it was built. Behind them, footsteps echoed on concrete. Major John Beam's voice cut through the silence. "Watson, we've got a problem. Found something in the factory office. Design documents, test logs." A pause that lasted too long. "And a flight manifest that says this prototype made 17 sorties. 17 against Allied bombers. And according to these records, we never saw it coming. Not once." Watson looked back at the HO-229, at its radar-absorbing skin and its impossible shape, and understood with perfect clarity why his hands wouldn't stop shaking. This wasn't just an aircraft. It was a glimpse of a future that had almost arrived too soon. A weapon that could have made the ME-262 look obsolete, that could have hunted Allied bombers invisibly, that represented a way of thinking about air combat that was years, maybe decades ahead of anything in Washington or London. The dog tags felt heavy in his palm. Too heavy. "Sir," Cairns' voice seemed to come from very far away. "What do we do?" Watson's thumb rubbed across Mitchell's name one more time before he made his decision. "Get a recovery team. This thing's going to right field. All of it. Every blueprint, every test report, every scrap of material. And Cairns," he turned to face his lieutenant, "none of this goes in the official log. Not yet." As his team began to measure and photograph, Watson couldn't shake the feeling that they'd found something that was supposed to stay hidden. The HO-229 sat silent in the shadows, waiting, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a question kept whispering. If this aircraft really had made 17 combat sorties without being detected, where were the mission reports? Where were the pilots? And why did the Nazis hide their most advanced weapon in an abandoned factory instead of throwing it into the desperate final defense of Berlin? The answer, he suspected, was worse than not knowing.
June 3rd, 1945, Freeman Field, Indiana. The HO-229 looked even more alien under American skies. Watson stood on the tarmac at Freeman Field, watching dawn light slide across that impossible wing, and felt the same unease that had gripped him in Friedrich-Roda. 6 weeks of reverse engineering had only deepened the mystery. The charcoal-based coating was designed to absorb radar wavelengths. The flying wing design eliminated right angles and reduced radar signature to almost nothing. The Nazis had accidentally invented stealth technology while trying to make a faster fighter. Test pilot Captain Richard Candelaria emerged from the operations building, flight suit zipped, helmet under one arm. Watson had chosen him carefully. Combat veteran, MIT engineering degree, nerves like steel. But Watson hadn't told him about the dog tags or the 17 phantom sorties that no Allied radar had ever recorded. Some secrets were too dangerous to share before a test flight. Candelaria climbed the ladder and settled into the cockpit. The bubble canopy closed with a solid thunk. Both Jumo 004 turbines began their startup sequence with that distinctive rising whine. The HO-229 seemed to crouch, gathering in tension. Radio crackle. "Freeman Tower, this is Ghost 1, ready for taxi." The aircraft moved toward the runway with surprising grace. Watson climbed into the observation truck, binoculars raised. Beside him, Frank Cairns gripped his notebook hard enough to leave marks. The Jumo engines spooled to full thrust. The HO-229 accelerated smoothly and lifted, rotation so gentle it looked effortless. The flying wing was airborne over American soil for the first time. Dangerously beautiful. It climbed in a steady arc, no corrections needed. Watson tracked it through binoculars as Candelaria executed gentle turns.
Freeman Tower, this is Ghost 1. Handling characteristics exceptional. She wants to go fast. Watson grabbed the radio. Negative, Ghost 1. Maintain current profile. A pause. Too long. Copy that, Freeman. But something in Candelaria's voice had changed. Cairns pointed at the radar screen. I'm losing the return. She's fading. The blip representing Ghost 1 grew fainter with each sweep, even though the aircraft was clearly visible. The HO-229 was disappearing from radar. Radio crackle again, but this time Candelaria's voice carried an edge. Freeman, Ghost 1, I'm seeing something in the cockpit. On the canopy glass. Scratches. Coordinates. They weren't there during pre-flight. They're appearing now. His breath came faster. And something's hanging from the control stick. A chain. Metal chain. Watson's blood turned to ice. He'd removed those dog tags himself, locked them in a safe at right field. Ghost 1, return to base immediately. But Candelaria wasn't listening. The coordinates are pointing east, Germany, mission coordinates. I'm reading names now, crew names. Bomber crews, they're all listed as missing in action, all 17 missions. Kill confirmations. This thing hunted them, and nobody ever saw it coming. The radar screen went blank. The HO-229 had vanished completely. Watson yanked the binoculars up just in time to see the flying wing roll inverted and dive. Not a test maneuver. A combat dive, aggressive and practiced, like muscle memory taking over. Ghost 1, pull up! Empty static for 5 seconds. Then Candelaria's voice came back, quieter now, almost resigned. It's not me, Watson. I'm not controlling it anymore. The aircraft remembers. A shuddering breath. And Mitchell says hello. The HO-229 leveled out at 300 feet, impossibly low and fast. Watson understood with perfect horror that they hadn't captured this aircraft. They'd woken it up. The Nazis had built something that learned to hunt, and now it was teaching an American pilot what it meant to be invisible, unstoppable. The flying wing streaked across Freeman Field twice, a dark angel testing its resurrection. Watson knew that when Candelaria landed, if he landed, nothing would be the same. They'd proven stealth was possible, that radar could be defeated, that air combat had changed forever. The flying wing climbed back toward the clouds, and Watson heard an echo of that final German log entry. Pilot refused to continue. Recommend project termination. Now he understood why. The radio crackled one final time. Freeman Tower, this is Ghost 1. I'm coming home, but you need to understand something. Candelaria's voice was different now, harder, changed. This isn't just an aircraft. It's a warning about what we're becoming. Watson lowered the binoculars as the flying wing began its approach. The flying wing touched down smooth as silk, and the future rolled to a stop on an Indiana runway. The Horten brothers' dream had survived the fall of the Reich. It had just changed flags. And in the sealed safe at right field, a pair of dog tags that should have been there had somehow returned to the aircraft, the chain still warm, the metal singing with impossible stories that no official report would ever tell.